Hello and welcome to our virtual Year 11 Parents Information event. I'm joined by Mrs Hoyle, Mr Clark and Mrs Pilkington, who are going to take you through some slides now so that you can get an insight into what Year 11 will look like for your child. At the end of this presentation, there is the facility to ask questions. So if you would like to ask any questions, please pop them into the chat box. And what we'll do is put together a frequently asked questions sheet that we'll upload onto Insight. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Mrs Hoyle.
Hello, I'm Mrs Hoyle and I'm going to talk to you about Year 11 and what students are going to be facing this year. The countdown to GCSEs has already started and the provisional start date for the main written exams is the 14th of May. And for our students, computer science and RS are the first ones. You may have seen in the press there are rumours that this date may change and there is talk that exam dates may be put back by 3 weeks. At the moment this hasn't been confirmed. If and when it does change, we will of course inform you. So working towards the 14th of May, that gives us 123 school days. And in school we're working hard to make sure that exam board specifications are completed and also we're starting to look at exam preparation. Our next milestone for Year 11 is the first set of mock exams and they're going to take place during lesson time in November. Students will have a second set as well and they're going to be scheduled for the beginning of February. From this point onwards though, it's really important that students need to be taking responsibility for completing homework, starting revision and preparing fully for their exams. It will make a massive difference to their GCSE results. So, some key dates for Year 11 students. The mock exams, as I've already mentioned, start in November. Students will be told when they are and subject teachers will be talking to them about what and how to revise. At the beginning of December, we'll upload the results of those to Insights in the shape of the Year 11 report. And then as we progress through the term, we need to make sure that all college applications have been submitted online by the 17th of December. After Christmas, we'll work towards the second set of mock exams, which will take place at the February, and that will be closely followed by a Year 11 Parents' Evening and also the mock exam results evening. We think it's very important to give our students the feeling of what it's like to open an envelope and see your results. For some students, it's a positive experience, and for some students, it actually makes them realise that they might need to do a little bit more revision. After that, it's the start of the GCSE exams, and what we would normally expect is that between March and May, the practical GCSEs would take place, followed by the written exams later on in May. At the moment, we're still waiting for confirmation of exact dates, and once we have those dates, we will of course confirm everything with you and make sure students know which exams they've got and when. One of the questions I'm frequently asked is what will happen if GCSEs are cancelled? Well, the answer is we don't know yet. We don't know whether GCSEs will take place, whether they will be cancelled, and a lot of that will depend on what happens with the pandemic. The only answer I've been able to give to students is what we had to do this year. So this year we were asked to generate centre assessed grades, and those were the grades that we expected students would have achieved if they had sat their GCSE exams in the summer. We were asked to take into account a variety of evidence looking at all aspects of students' learning. So we had to look at mock exam results, any other formal assessments conducted within lessons, the standard of classwork and homework, any contributions in lessons which might have evidenced students' level of knowledge and understanding, the results of any past paper practice questions that we did in lessons or at home, and attendance and engagement with revision sessions. Taking all that into account helped us to look objectively at every single student and work out what grade we think they would have achieved. So my message to Year 11 students this year is, if the same was to happen to you, you need to make sure that from the very beginning of Year 11, you are working at the highest possible level so that if we were asked to look at generating centre assessed grades again, you have evidence to show what you are capable of. Another question I'm obviously asked is when do Year 11 students leave school? So the official leaving date is always the final Friday in June, so next year that will be the 25th. We've also been asked to set aside a contingency date, which is the 29th of June. Please do not book any holidays or make any commitments for Year 11 students before that date. It's absolutely essential that students remain available for exams until the actual exam series is finished. Results day will be Thursday the 26th of August, and as always, students will receive the results in an envelope, and we'll make sure they understand what that envelope contains, that they understand what results they've achieved, and that they understand whether they've managed to access the course or the apprenticeship that they've applied for. Colleges will be in touch separately about their individual enrolment arrangements. So it's not just about GCSEs this year. Students have also got to try and work out what they want to do next year. And we've urged students to visit our school websites. The careers pages on there contain a wealth of information and support. In PSHE lessons, students have also been studying the labour market information so they know that where jobs are available. They've been looking at writing CVs and making those applications to college. And also they'll start to look at preparing for interviews so they know what to expect. Throughout October and November, the colleges and training providers will send online presentations so that students receive information about those options, and students will have also had a one-to-one meeting with Mrs. Long. We're lucky that we've got Mrs. Long in school as a permanent careers advisor. Students know that they can access her through the careers room or via email all week. If any student is still really struggling with what they want to do in the future, then additional targeted sessions will be arranged to meet their needs. As parents, if you're concerned or you've got any advice or you want to seek guidance of anything for your child, please feel free to contact Mrs. Long either via email or by phone, or also look at our school website to see what information is there. So important dates for Year 11. By Wednesday the 14th of October, Mrs. Long would like to know which colleges students intend to apply for so that they can attend the masterclasses, and they'll get the support and guidance they need to make sure those applications are done. As I mentioned, the one-to-one careers appointments will have been taking place, and the final few should be taking place in the next few days. In November, the college application masterclasses will commence, and then November and December, the apprenticeship workshops will take place so that students wanting to follow this route can also know what they need to do. At the end of November, any BAE apprenticeship online applications will start, and by the end of term, so Thursday the 17th of December, students need to have made and finalised all college applications online. In the meantime, what I would suggest is that students try and attend as many different open events as they possibly can do. So here are the dates for Cardinal Newman, Preston's College and Runshaw College. Students, it's beneficial for you to go. Don't think, I know where I want to go, so I'm not going to look at anything else. Sometimes it's just as helpful to be clear why you don't want to go somewhere or why you do want to go somewhere as the other options, so that it helps to make an informed decision. If you are interested in any of the open events, please use the link on Show My Homework to register your interest. Thank you, and I'm going to hand you over now to Mrs. Pilkington, who's going to continue with some information. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mrs. Pilkington, and I'm going to talk to you about revision. There are two platforms that we use in school, Show My Homework and Teams. Show My Homework is where your teachers will set you reminders and tell you what revision tasks you need to complete that week. Teams is where you will probably do the majority of your tasks, either through assignments, class notebooks, or quizzes where teachers will test your knowledge. Before you know it, your exams are going to be happening. You need to not underestimate how quickly this year will pass. You need to make sure that you are using every single moment to revise and you're starting your revision now. We don't really say this to you very often, but it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to just think about yourself for the next couple of months. Try not to worry about what other people are saying they're doing in terms of revision. Try to ignore your friends if they say that they're not doing any revision or they're spending hours and hours doing it. This is about you and you getting the very best results that you need to get. It's okay to feel a little bit overwhelmed. Revision can feel a little bit like a maze. It can feel like you don't know what direction to go in. You can feel like that you don't know what to do next, and you can sometimes feel a little bit lost. This is all perfectly normal. It's okay to feel under pressure, and you need to make sure that you're speaking to your teachers and your parents if you're feeling like this. You need to make sure that you're removing all distractions when you're revising. It's so tempting when your phone goes off to check it, but if you're in the middle of concentrating on something and then you go and check a video or you reply to a friend via a text message, then automatically you're going to lose all concentration and you're going to forget what you were reading. So please make sure you're trying to reduce that by getting rid of all of your devices. The best thing to do is to hand your PlayStation remotes or your phone to your parents and ask them to keep them until you've finished your revision, and then you can get them back. It's also really important to have somewhere quiet and organised to revise. Try and set yourself up a desk somewhere. Make sure that it's organised and that all your resources are there that you need, but don't try and pile up all your different types of revision for different lessons. This will only make you feel even more overwhelmed. Only have on your desk what you're revising at that moment in time. Organisation is absolutely key. You need to make sure you know exactly what topics you are going to revise and don't try and miss any out. Make sure you speak to your teacher and you have a list of exactly what it is that you need to revise for your exams. A massive mistake that students make is they try and guess what's going to be on the exam paper by looking at previous exams. Please don't do this. Don't try and second guess what exam boards are doing. You may need to make sure that you're revising everything. Another thing that students do is they copy notes from their textbook just onto another piece of paper. I'll cover this in a moment. Don't avoid the topics that you struggle with. It's really tempting to do the things that are easy, but revision is about looking at what you are struggling with, what you're finding difficult, and making sure that you get your head around those things. There are a number of things that you can use, and some of these will be familiar to you because your teachers will have already been using them with you. Trigger words and diagrams, mind maps, knowledge organisers, some of you like using colour or pictures and images, revision websites and acronyms to remind you how to structure responses. Trigger words is an excellent way to try and revise, especially if you've got a lot of text to read. What we tend to find is that, as I said before, students will either copy text down or they'll highlight everything on the page. You don't need to do that. If we take this as an example, a short extract about the context of an inspector calls, you actually only need to highlight 3 words in here: socialist and when it was written. Those 3 things will help you to remember what sits behind that. You don't need all the information. If you read socialist, it will trigger all kinds of other memories in your head. Your teachers might also have given you knowledge organisers. Again, this is a way of condensing vast amounts of information into one page. Make sure you're using these because your teachers know the best information to have on your knowledge organisers, and they will have thought long and hard about how best to get you to remember key information. Something else you might be using is the Cornell model, where you make notes on something that you've been reading or a video that you've been watching, and then you set yourself questions in order to be able to remember that information. Again, this is an excellent way of trying to condense information, but also to try and remember it and test yourself and see what you can and can't remember. Another excellent way is to use revision cards. The best way to use these is to put questions on one side and answers on the other. Test yourself and have a pile of questions that you got right and a pile of questions that you got wrong. And then you know where you need to focus your revision next time. Make sure you are picking up the pile of cards that you've got wrong and you're making sure that you learn the information that you have forgotten. Another great way to revise is to teach other people. We remember 95% of what we teach to others because in order to be able to teach it, you have to understand it really well. So ask your parents if you can tell them about something that you've been learning about in class that day. Ask your friends if they want to pair up and you can teach each other different concepts and different ideas that you've been studying. And one thing to remember, the pupils who get the top grades have one thing in common. They don't just revise what they've been taught in class. If you want those top grades, you need to go away and you need to do a little bit of independent study too. You need to look at ideas and concepts that you've been learning in class, and you need to make sure that you're looking at different ways of viewing things. It's okay to forget information. That is perfectly normal. When you first learn something new, it will go into your short-term memory. and you have to keep bringing it back into your long-term memory by forgetting it over and over again. The more you do this, the stronger your memory will become, and eventually you'll be able to pull that information back into your brain really, really quickly. There are another key things that you need to do, and one of them is applying the knowledge into your skills. You need to make sure as you move towards Christmas that you start to do as many past papers and questions as you possibly can. Your teachers will be able to give you these, and you might be able to find them on the exam board websites as well. Make sure you have a go at all the questions on the paper and then give it your teacher, and they'll mark it and give you some feedback. If you're prepared to do the hard work, I can guarantee you your teachers will be prepared to help you. Once you've got that feedback, again, it's about identifying what you didn't know. So make sure you highlight the questions that you didn't get full marks on, and then you focus on these. Was it the skill that you didn't know, or was it the knowledge that was letting you down, or a combination of both? Make sure you then practice these questions over and over again. It's really important that you're prepared. So you must make sure that the night before the exams, you get an early night. There's nothing worse than trying to concentrate when you're exhausted. Allow your brain to wake up in the morning. And by this, I mean, please don't get up 5 minutes before you need to leave the house and then rush into school at the last minute. You need to give yourself time to get up and get yourself some breakfast and give yourself time to relax before you go and do your exams. Check your timetable. You'd be surprised how many pupils in the past have missed exams, or they've been on the last minute because they just made silly mistakes and didn't check their timetables properly. Have the correct equipment. There's nothing worse than being in an exam and not having any equipment with you. Your clear pencil cases and your equipment packs will help you with this. You also need to make sure that you drink plenty of water. Water helps you to concentrate. If you're dehydrated, you will find it much harder to focus when you're in the exams. So make sure you bring a bottle of water with you. Make sure you arrive early. Again, this is about not rushing into an exam at the last minute and being all flustered when you arrive. So please make sure you set off on time. And most important, please will you ask for help? Teachers are used to this. Every year they see students who are struggling and finding it all a little bit overwhelming. Please come and see us, and please come and help us and ask us if you need any support or you need any help with anything. I'm now going to pass over to Mr. Clark.
Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Clark and I'm the Deputy Head Teacher in charge of Personal Development, Behaviour and Welfare. I'm here to talk you through a few slides in regards to how we can best support your child both in school and at home over the coming months. Now, I'm a sports teacher by trade and very much I see the year ahead as a sports analogy. Now, it was a few moons ago now that England rugby team last won their World Cup, and throughout their training, Sir Clive Woodward, their coach, drilled them with one key mantra. And so it took them 2 years in the build-up before the World Cup of them preparing and going through this mantra in every training session, every practice, every drill, every game in the build-up to the World Cup itself. And Sir Clive Woodward kept on talking about teacup, and he got the team to constantly talk about teacup, 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 and it refocused them. It allowed them to think clearly and correctly under pressure. It was an analogy that they built up over the coming months so that when it did finally come around to the World Cup, they were able to focus and to make sure that they were executing correctly every time under the pressure in which they were experiencing. And that's a bit like our Year 11s now. We're halfway through that 2-year cycle, just like the England rugby team were. And we need to make sure that we are thinking correctly under pressure in our GCSEs. So how are we going to do this, and how are we going to help the Year 11s do that? Well, like I said, the Year 11s are now in their training. And it was Muhammad Ali that said the fight is won or lost far away from witnesses, behind the lines in the gym and out of there on the road long before I dance under those lines. And clearly he's stating that we can't just walk into our GCSE exams and expect them to go well. We have to train for them, and we have to train behind the closed doors, away from that exam hall, in the build up over the coming years to make sure that when we do get there, we are executing well. And so it's really my job to say that although your child is coming into lessons every day and into school and undoubtedly working hard, relying on just the input for school lessons alone isn't enough. Students also need to be attending those revision sessions after school and also completing all homework and revision at home. So how are we going to do this? I don't have a teacup mantra as such, like Sir Clive Woodward. I've got my own. And my own successful mantra is to be organised, to learn and to apply. So organise your time and work. Make sure that we learn our subject content and everything that's involved in each of our different discipline areas. And then finally, making sure that we can apply what we've learned to given situations. So the first one then, to be organised. The best bit of advice, and I know something that my colleagues have previously said, is to start early. Preparation is essential. I would like you to go out and have a look at the list of topics that every one of your subject areas has to make sure that you know fully and your child knows fully what is involved in that particular exam. What could potentially come up and therefore what you would have to learn throughout the coming year. Get that revision timetable created. If you haven't already, there's no time like today. Don't put off tomorrow what you could do today. So that revision timetable really needs to be up and started by now if it isn't. Make sure that where it is, we're putting set subjects in and we're giving all subjects equal weighting. Make sure that revision timetable enables them to work hard, but for short bursts of time. It shouldn't be in extended periods of time that we're working on one subject area. Make it really clear to your child that timetable is there for them to stick to. Try not to make excuses and find other alternatives to do, but stick to the timetable that you've built. Because as soon as that is embedded, you're going to really start to build up those minutes and those hours of revision that we can do over the coming weeks and months as we build up to our GCSEs. Finally, make sure that there's a clear space at home that will enable you to be able to revise successfully and away from distractions. So that's organised complete, but how are we going to learn? Well, there's many different ways of revision methods, and I know Miss Pilkington's already spoken to you about some. My advice, and I have to underline it and I've bolded it in the presentation, but make sure that all technology is completely out of the way and won't disturb you. I know most of revision and most students use laptops and computers and access to technology whilst they're doing their revision, but what I mean by that is make sure that there's no social media in the background opened up. Make sure that there's no online chats, or make sure that the TV is off and you've got a nice quiet area to be able to focus on the learning in hand. My top tips are to always make sure you're using colour. Black and white becomes a bit dull and colour will help us memorise and remember certain facts. Make sure that all the facts are written on index cards or post-it notes or whatever you've got to be able to make flashcards. Make sure that these cards are always organised in the same order and look at them in the same order each time. It will enable us to remember them far quicker than if they're sporadic and all over the place. Some fantastic examples of voice recordings have been put on, especially in previous years, by some of our linguists in French and our foreign languages there, where they're able to voice record some of their keynotes and they'll be able to listen to them back over and over again. That's especially good if your child travels to school by bus. They can stick their headphones on, whether they're walking, and use some of that unused time as such to be able to up their hours and to increase the amount of revision they're doing. Make sure that we're using all the usual ones, the spider diagrams, flows, charts, the drawings, the mind maps, whatever works best for your child. But what I would also say is one of my top tips is that students, just like adults, we like to know what we can do and we stick to that, and we don't always challenge ourselves to do the things that are quite hard or things that we don't know. And so when you are going through your curriculum lists and identifying all the different content from your different subject areas, make sure that you're identifying what you don't know and revising this rather than what you do know already. I know at the beginning when we're learning, it will feel like an absolute forest out there. In the beginning, it will feel like we don't have a straight path through. I can't see where I'm going, and it's very difficult to find out where the end path is. However, by creating that timetable, by starting your revision early, it will start to feel a lot clearer, and that path will really start to come out and define. And this is where you will end up. So organise and learn, and we move on to apply. Now, it's all well and good having all this knowledge and all this understanding and be able to evaluate that, but ultimately we need to apply this in different given situations. And my top tip is to apply this to past exam papers. Now, if you go on to the exam board websites for your particular exam or subject area, they will always have past papers on there with mark schemes as well, which will enable you to test yourself on actual previous GCSE questions and be able to mark them at home. So you can get that instant feedback to make sure you understand where your knowledge lies and where the gaps in your knowledge lie, so that you're able to go through and correct them and revise those particular areas. So my top tips for that successful revision is to be organised, to learn and to apply. Now, some tips for parents over the coming months, because undoubtedly your child is going to become quite anxious, quite stressed, and that's perfectly natural in the build up to such a T-junction in their life. My top tips for you are to be positive at all times. Try to frame those conversations and celebrate when your child is doing something well. Also be realistic. There is a lot of work coming their way and they will be doing an increased amount of hours, and be realistic about what they can and cannot do. Some tips that some parents in the past have told us that they've stopped some of the leisure activities. I would certainly say that that's not necessarily a suggested method and one that we would request that you do, as all students need to have a bit of a release, and especially a physical activity. There will be times when your child needs to relax and unwind, and that's especially the case before they do go to bed, to make sure that their mind is free and that they're not taking that into their sleep. Don't forget it's always healthy to talk about feelings, and we've spoken already about the opportunity to provide them with a quiet area where they can revise. It goes without saying to take an interest in the revision that they're doing, but it also shows that you're being interested, and by being interested, you're helping them learn. Finally, some of our parents talk about big extrinsic rewards for their child throughout the exam process. And I know that that's not necessarily the case for all of us, but sometimes it's the real little things that make a difference, such as a favourite meal, that allowing them to take control of the remote control on the television of an evening. It might be that, we take them out and we go for that walk together, or we do something nice together at a weekend. Remember to reward your child throughout the process. However, undoubtedly your child is going to experience quite a lot of stress, and it's important that you as parents understand and pinpoint where that stress is coming from. Now, some big key common reasons for stress in Year 11 students could be the fear of failure, obviously not being able to go on to their next steps. Could be that they're overworking, they're doing too much at this particular moment in time, and that's why that timetable will help to make sure that there's lots of bite-sized chunks on there rather than overloading them at this stage. Obviously, we don't want them to become lonely and isolated, so make sure that they do feel like they're still keeping in touch with friends and family. Obviously, there is that pressure there that starts to cause stress, knowing that they're coming to a key junction in their lives. But also, for some students, it will be the guilt that they could have done more at an earlier stage and they've left it to the last moment. But ultimately, and what I really want to get across to you, is that stress is normal. Stress is a normal part of life. And let's be honest with ourselves, life is stressful. This is one of those key moments in life, and we need to be able to provide our young people and your children with the ability to be able to overcome stress. And how are they going to manage that? Well, the best way, and like we've spoken about, is to establish that routine nice and early, and that timetable will definitely help them with that. If you haven't already, that needs to be underway. And there's a key element there where we've said short, sharp, intensive revision is much better, and that will allow them to take regular breaks in between different subject areas. We've spoken about the importance of exercise and relaxation, enabling them to build up those positive endorphins in their body to make sure that they are calm. Making sure that we're not doing the same thing over and over. Variety is the spice of life, as they say, and make sure that we're keeping that routine there, but also mixing it up and making sure that there is variety in the way that we're rewarding ourselves or taking time off, and we're not just into that same old mundane routine. Finally, meeting up with friends is vitally important, and also family there to make sure they're having that time out. One of the issues that we do face quite commonly is sleep patterns in our Year 11 students. With all this extra work and extra revision that they are doing on top of all their schoolwork and their homework, it is vitally important that they are still getting as much sleep as they possibly can. It was shown to me not long ago that I read research that the average 15-year-old should still be getting 9.5 hours sleep a night. And I know that for some students that might seem very surprising, because I know a lot of them have less than that. But it does give us a key indicator to how much sleep every child should be having. So if they are waking up at 7 o'clock every morning, that shows that they do need to be going to sleep in the hour of 9 every night to be able to be successful at this moment in time and control that stress. And remember, I've said it before, but stress is normal. So if your child is feeling stressed, that is a perfectly normal emotion to be experiencing at this moment in time. So finally, from me, it's just to say good luck to all of our students and their families. So you as parents and our students, because May the 14th may seem like a long way off now, but it will be upon us in absolutely no time. And the journey to success, if it hasn't already started, should be well underway by now. But thank you very much, and I'll pass you back over to our head teacher, Miss Asquith.
Okay, that concludes our presentation. If you do have any questions, please drop them into the comments box at the end of the presentation, and we'll upload some frequently asked question responses onto Insight in the next couple of days. Thank you for joining us.